Hi, Barry Eden here, and welcome to Radio Out There. Happiness, is it a birthright? Is it something we have to find for ourselves? And why are so many people unhappy right now in the world? My guest this week is Patricia Saunders, the author of Creating a Happy World. Patricia, welcome to Radio Out There. This is the only radio show with pictures. So lovely to have a talk to you. I'm in Australia, you're in the US, and lovely to have you on the program. You haven't been with us before, so tell me a bit about your background.
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me on the show, Barry. I really appreciate the opportunity just to talk about the book and about transcendental meditation, how it can contribute, let's put it that way, it can contribute to an increase in happiness for people, also for society. But as far as I'm concerned, it just seems like a long, long time ago now, but I trained as a classical musician. I was all set to be a concert pianist and, write music and so on. And then I don't know, something changed. I learned transcendental meditation. I fell in love with it. I just love the whole idea of getting as many people encouraging as many people as possible to actually learn the technique. And so I trained to become a teacher of transcendental meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow I never looked back. I've been teaching TM. I've been involved in projects with the Transcendental Meditation Organization. And then, of course, in 2006, I came to the US, to Fairfield in the US, to join a very long meditation program. And I started off in Washington, D.C., and that came to an end. I came down to Fairfield and joined the group there. There was a large group there, and the idea was to show that transcendental meditation and its more advanced program, the TM City program, could actually affect the crime rate, first of all, in the US. And I must say that the results were quite startling, especially between 2007 and 2011, when the results were, the numbers very high. But actually, just coming back to me, I started to do an MA in Maharishi Science at Maharishi International University, which is an accredited university that was founded by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. He brought the transcendental meditation technique to the West. And since then, it's gone from strength to strength. And it teaches all subjects in the light of consciousness, in the light of a spiritual foundation, let's put it that way.
All right. Well, we have a lot to talk about. And I must say, before we start, we have something in common. Very, very early in my career, I was a concert manager with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. And I then left that, went into the theatre, and then followed the rest of my career. But I nearly went down the concert path myself there. So we do have that in common. Now, let's look at your book. Is called Creating a Happy World, Cultivating Happiness Through the Transcendental Meditation Program. Now, happiness. You start off by talking about that and talking about all the history we've had over the years with famines and wars and disasters and so on. And you say that stress, worry and sadness, quoting the book, are on the rise, according to the 2022 World Happiness Report, which of course was in the midst of COVID. A World Happiness Report. Why do we go down this track? Why do we need a report to show us how happy or not we are? I mean, is this really strange?
I don't know. People nowadays like to document everything, it seems. It's the age of science, and even something like happiness can be measured and understood, documented. I think it's quite useful because it is a measure of where life is going, and in a way, reading a report like the World Happiness Report, which actually is sponsored by the World um, Health Organization. That report just indicates somehow how people are feeling about life, how people are feeling about their lives. And it's actually interesting because I started to write Creating a Happy World at the end of the pandemic. Well, actually, not at the end, really in the middle, because because I began to notice things. For instance, people can be very outward, other people can be very inward. But I started to notice during the pandemic that with lockdown and everything, even the outward people, the people who like to, be gregarious and be very chatty and love to, to talk to other people, even if it was only on the phone or via Zoom, they seem to be becoming much more inward, much less smiling and happy somehow. And it sort of set me thinking, well, what's going on? And I started to have ideas for the book. It wasn't something I consciously thought, oh, I'm going to write about happiness. It's just that these thoughts started to come to me. And so I noticed more and more how people were feeling, and generally whether young people were happy too, because I've always been involved in teaching in some capacity or another. And I just noticed that young people here in the US, because I came to the US really in 2006, as I said earlier, but they weren't showing the same signs of happiness and, wanting to be involved with the world and so on. There was a change. And I began to get ideas for writing it, and I started to look up statistics for happiness, for well-being and contentment and so on. And I don't know, from there it just escalated. And of course I read the World Happiness Report, and I thought, oh my goodness, something needs to be done about this. Or, in my own, tiny, minuscule way, I need to offer something. And then, of course, I started writing about, about happiness and about unhappiness too, and what's going on with people. That report was in 2022. The latest World's Happiness Report actually has a more depressing view.
More? Oh my God.
Yes, the one that came out 2024. Right. I read an article in the New York Times about that. First of all, the US itself is no longer in the top 20 countries, and it pretty much has been in the past. And that especially applies to the under 30s. The funny thing is the happiest young people now seem to be in Lithuania. And the unhappiest people, I think it would be no surprise to know that they live in Afghanistan.
Yeah, well, true.
So, young people in the US are less happy now than they were in 2022. And that's a depressing sign. There can be reasons for this. There's been quite a bit of research. I do document all this in the book, so I don't have to sort of cite all the papers and everything now.
No.
But one of the things is how we use social media, for instance.
Oh, that's always a real problem as far as I'm concerned. There's so many dangers with it, so much, nasty stuff going on. Used positively, social media is very good, but when you see all the things that are going on, it's no wonder there's so much unhappiness.
Well, that's right. It's been shown to lower well-being, for instance.
Mm.
increases rates of depression and anxiety. And that's funny enough, it's particularly among young girls and women, I mean, teenage girls. So
Was this
that
because
is,
of body image or personality-wise, or what?
I don't really know. I'm not really sure.
Because I know,
Um,
if you don't look like a Hollywood star, then you're ugly and fat and horrible or something. All these terrible, terrible things that can go
I,
on.
but I think also, there's been such a negative feedback loop from consuming so much news, and the news has been so bad, and
Mm.
you know the journalists are talking about World War III and coming of, and so many things associated with Russia, Ukraine, and now Israel and Gaza and so on. And it's depressing. It's very
Mm.
depressing to keep reading about. And I think a lot of young people also are concerned about climate change. They're wondering where the world is going to, whether there's any point in, um, having a career and having children and all the rest of
Well,
it.
that's very sad because I've got my
Yes,
thoughts on that. We won't go into that because that's a totally different subject. But you're
right.
right. I mean, there is a lot of fear out there. And I think also because of government and also because of the COVID pandemic, the fear that was spread by governments and health people all around the world. And now the stories are coming out how a lot of it was totally manipulated and how big farmers made hundreds of billions of dollars and so on. So people have been manipulated. So this happiness area is not always the individual fault, but there's a lot of societal kind of unhappiness being provoked. Would you agree?
Oh, I agree totally, actually. I mean, you only have to read the news and see how much the headlines dwell
Mm.
on negativity.
I know.
We know there is negativity in the world, but I mean, I have a personal desire, and that's that I don't think that any news article should be put out about something negative unless at the end of the article it has something suggesting solutions to the problems, things that we can do to
Mm.
help ourselves or to help somebody else or help another country or something. I think it's very important that there's a balance, and at the moment I think the balance has gone.
Mm.
uh,
It has. Look, I was a newsreader for many years for a radio and TV, and the stories, the way we did them in those days, back in the 70s and 80s and whatever, very, very different to the way they are presented now and written, and the content as well. There's a lot more fear and a lot more, I don't know, violence out there. They'll
yeah,
lead news bulletins with murders and things like that. We never ever did that. So I think this is all contributing to the whole unhappiness all around the world. You add materialism to all of that, and you've got a bad cocktail, haven't you?
absolutely. I mean, materialism as a philosophy has done, I think, a lot of harm. Um, just trying to think, really, I suppose, that there are different ways. Obviously, people have different ways of looking at the world. Um, Nowadays, I think materialism as a philosophy seems to have the upper hand. It's something that a lot of philosophers and scientists as well would probably agree with. They think that the world is ultimately the result of physical processes, that everything happens is the result of physical processes,
Mm,
and that it all comes down to something physical.
mm,
And,
mm.
that takes away, I mean, I don't believe that for 1 minute. Materialism has given us some good things. I mean, it has given us washing machines, I mean, travel, trains, cars, homes, etc. But when it claims that everything is physical at source, then of course I think it's totally gone to extremes and is completely down a wrong path. But actually, one of the good things is that I think the march of modern physics, when one really looks into where the most advanced physics is going, is in the process of derailing materialism. I mean, we do live in a very mysterious universe, and materialism cannot explain a lot of things. Um,
But it's a focus, though, Patricia, a focus. If you don't have a lovely brand new house, a shiny car, a fabulous job, doing all those things, then you're a failure. Materialism is not how many things you have, the bright objects in your house. What all coming at the expense of spiritualism and also some kind of meaning in life. And people seem to have lost a lot of the meaning. It's all the toys, all the bits and pieces. That's it. If you don't have that, you're a failure.
Absolutely. Um, I mean, I think I think we've lost a great deal. We've gained a lot, but we've also lost a lot.
Mm.
And actually, I would love to talk about happiness actually on two levels. I mean, the surface level of happiness. And then I want to talk about something much deeper, a very deep happiness that's of a permanent nature. And in a way, how that can be achieved. Obviously, that's in the book. But, you know, if I was to say, I mean, if I was to ask you a question, Barry, I mean, what do you think happiness is?
What do I think happiness is? The fact of being as positive as I can. I like to think that by doing this show and other aspects of my life, I'm helping people in some way. My main object is to try and help people to help themselves, to be inspiring, also to be creative with laughs here and there, and enjoy life. Yes, you have to get out there, you have to work, you have to make some money, you've got to pay the rent, you've got to buy food, but it's that enjoyment. But to me, without my spiritual beliefs, I'm not happy. That is the thing that rounds off my happiness.
Yes, I mean, it's true actually. And I think most people will probably agree with you. I mean, I mean, a lot of people would probably describe happiness as that contented feeling,
Mm.
maybe an uplifting sensation, something that brings some level of satisfaction to their life, however they find it. Um, there are problems, though, really, partly because that can be very transient. I mean, if one looks to hobbies for some happiness, I mean, it does bring happiness, they do bring, but
Temporarily, temporarily, not
temporarily,
overall though. I
yeah,
mean, I play
that,
tennis, but very badly. But I play tennis, and that is a nice escape. One moment, happy, but I can't play tennis 24/7. So that's just an activity, isn't it? You need more than
yeah,
just activity.
yes, it's absolutely true, actually.
Mm.
And I mean, there are a few things there actually. I mean, happiness is something that we all want. It's something we do
Mm.
aspire to it, and we think it's our right to be happy. And as you say, you know, one stops doing the activity or whatever it is that we think brings us happiness, and euphoria fades, and then the old loneliness or insecurities or whatever it creeps back in. Um, I mean, believe it or not, that there is a huge amount of research that's been done on happiness,
Mm.
and the scientists or the researchers, anyway, seem to think that we can reach a state of happiness depending on three factors: our genetic makeup, for instance. Are we destined to be happy? Our circumstances and our activities. But you know, genetic makeup, genes can change, they can be turned on and off. I mean, they've shown that in medical science, medical research. And circumstances can change, our activities can change. So, you know, our those factors are not set in stone.
Mm. No, fair enough.
They can, they absolutely can change.
Oh.
And, you know, that's why I talk about really transcendental meditation, understanding happiness through transcendental meditation.
Mm.
I mean, everybody has their own path to happiness, whatever that is.
Mm.
And as you say, something that has been seriously left out of life and it has been the spiritual side. That's not, that's not our fault. Somehow the media, everything is full of, if you watch a TV program, there's always going to be somebody who says, I'm an atheist, and the whole program is sort of like that, or adverts that play on our desire for more material comfort. Always the suggestion is that somehow the spiritual side is life. Well, some people do it, some people don't. It's not really that important, but actually it is the most important thing because it's the basis for life.
That's right. It's interesting. You've made me think. I don't want to cut in on you, but it made me think, what is happiness and what makes me happy? And I suddenly realised what I didn't mention, and I wonder why I forgot, is my family, my friends, my partner, Anne. And my partner, Anne, has her first two names the same as yours, Patricia Anne.
Wow.
So there we are. But I'm happy when I'm with her. I'm happy when I'm with my family, and I'm happy with my friends. So that is also a vital part, isn't it? So you mentioned loneliness a moment ago, and that was what triggered my thoughts there. How important the other people in our lives are to our happiness.
Yes. That, of course, was the problem with lockdown, because we were separated from the very human contact and nourishing human contact that we needed. And I don't think it's got back to normal again as far as human contact is concerned. There's still this tendency to, if you're standing in line, for instance, waiting to be served in a store, there's still the tendency to to move away from the people in front and the people behind and so on. And although that has its advantages, because maybe you're less likely to get a cold, but at the same time, we used to stand in line and say, oh, the weather's terrible, isn't it? Thank goodness we're inside. There'd be some little chit chat, and that doesn't happen to the same extent.
Yeah, I haven't noticed. I talk to people, whatever. I've never thought about why. I've never worried about masks and all that sort of stuff, because it's all been proved to be a load of rubbish anyway by so many world health experts and so on. Not the WHO, but a lot of other people. So, I mean, it's up to the individual. That's the point I'm trying to make here. Happiness has to come from within, surely.
Well, that's it. You see, I mean, all the things we've been talking about are things that are outside, things from there. And if those things go, then what are we left with? We're just left with a sort of empty feeling, and, feel we need to fill it from somewhere else. So, coming back to creating a happy world.
Yes, that's what I was going to ask you now. We've identified what happiness is, what unhappiness is. So how do we contradict that? And you say, of course, transcendental meditation. Maybe a lot of people who are listening and watching don't know what that is, so we can explore that. But once again, is it up to us, or can we say to somebody, okay, doctor, okay, psychiatrist, psychologist, I'm unhappy. Here, you fix it. Go on, do it. That's what people want. They want instant happiness, don't they? Instant happiness, mainly out of a bottle full of pills.
Right. Well, of course, I suppose that could happen for some people, but for the vast majority, it's something we need to find for ourselves. We need to find our own path. I found my own path with transcendental meditation. I learned it a long time ago. And from my very first meditation session, it was as if I'd had a mental bath, a sort of warm bath, and somehow not all the negativity, but a lot of the very challenging thoughts that I was having at that time somehow didn't seem quite as important. And then as I meditated more, they became less and less important. And the more positive feelings began to come to the front. And I began to think, well, yes, I can do this. And I am a positive person, and I can, make those relationships. I can do this, I can do that. And I began to have this sort of inner serenity inside. I'm not talking about days, I'm talking about weeks, months, and ultimately years. But that inner serenity began to grow from almost the first meditation, very soon after the first meditation, so that whatever I was doing, I was carrying within that somehow that inner silence, that inner serenity of silence. And it just made life so much easier. I didn't feel that I had to be someone other than I was. I kind of felt I became to know who I was, where I was going. And where I was going before I meditated was not the right path for me, to be absolutely frank. But gradually I began to find the right path. And it did involve teaching, and always has involved teaching of one sort or another. But it also just involved an inner certainty, knowing who I was, feeling that sense of happiness that I couldn't be pushed around, that if something happened, I knew I could weather the storm. There was that strength, that serenity inside.
Mm-hmm.
And, it just somehow all led to me being at this moment deciding to write a book about happiness. I'd already written a book before with another author, but this one I wanted to be specifically about happiness. And
now, do you think you were inspired to write this from within, from your subconscious, your higher self, or was it, do you think, a message from the other side, from your guide or whatever? Do you think you were destined to do this, or it's something that just pleased you to do it?
I think that I'm not quite sure how to explain this really, but many things I've done in my life since learning transcendental meditation, I felt somehow moved to do it, as if something inside of me was saying, this is what you're destined to do, this is what you're expected to do, this is what your higher self, if you like, this is what your higher self wants you to do, if you can. There's a difference between our lower self and our higher self. With our lower self, just for your readers or your audience who may not be quite so familiar with these terms, or they may know more about them than I do. Either way, I'll just say that
we have a wide range of listeners and viewers, let me tell you.
I'm sure. But the inner self, that's just the way we somehow react to the world. It's our thoughts, feelings, and the way we act with the relative material life. But the higher self is that spiritual self, that spiritual aspect of ourselves that is always there if we take the time to find it. And the higher self,
you can chat to your higher self. I do all the time.
Yes, you can, or you can experience it directly. When people meditate, or even with prayer, with very deep prayer, when people meditate, then the mind can settle down through finer and finer levels of thinking and reaches a state where it goes beyond, it transcends all thoughts and feelings. And that transcendental aspect of our life, that is the higher self. It can be called all sorts of different things. Pure consciousness, the self, being, oneness, samadhi, nirvana, whatever you want to call it, it's there. It's the different names for the same state of consciousness. We can experience that. Practice meditation. I do TM, transcendental meditation. Other people do other forms of meditation. Other people pray. Whatever people do, it's there. It's always there, and we can turn towards it. We can learn how to experience it at any moment in our lives. We don't have to wait and think, I've got to wait, till this happens, or I've done that, or my children have left home, or I've, done whatever. I can do it now.
That's
I
right.
can experience that higher self.
And it's finding that quiet time within yourself. And you can do that in many different places. You can escape somewhere just for 5 minutes to find that inner peace for a while. Now, tell me a bit more about transcendental meditation, because as you said a moment ago, there are many forms of meditation. I mean, I practice basic meditation. I've even got a CD out that I put out many years ago on meditation. I've conducted meditation groups, all sorts of things. So I know there are many different kinds. Tell us about transcendental. What's the difference and how do you practice it?
Yes, I mean, there are differences between different forms of meditation. We can come to that later if you like. Um, well, transcendental meditation, it's a very simple, natural mental technique.
Mm.
And it's practiced silently with the eyes closed, just sitting in any comfortable position. I mean, a lot of people just meditate in a comfortable armchair, for instance. You don't have to sit in lotus or,
No. And say,
go up.
and stuff like that. Don't need to do that, no.
You don't have to do that. It's not focusing on breathing, it's not concentration, nor is it trying to clear your mind. Um, it's a mantra technique, and it allows the active thinking mind just to settle inward and experience pure consciousness. That's another term for the self, higher self, transcendental consciousness, whatever we want to call it. The transcendent is sometimes just the easiest thing to say. And that's when one transcends all the mind's busy activity. The mind will wander this way and that, this way and that. But one thing about the mind, it moves in the direction of what gives it greater happiness, greater charm. So it's the natural process of the mind to settle down to more charming, more happy, more blissful levels, providing that it has a technique to do that. And the experience of the transcendent, going beyond all the thoughts and feelings and so on, it's beyond the mind and senses. It's much bigger than that. The experience of the transcendent is something that's not like anything else. I mean, when you experience transcending, of course, you don't usually have the experience that you don't usually are aware of the experience, is what I'm trying to say. It's when you just come back from that transcendental level and you think, oh my goodness, I've been somewhere, but I don't know where I've been. Time stood still. I just feel happy. And I didn't before I sat down to meditate, that kind of thing, that there is all that. And I think that very profound and rejuvenating rest that one gets from transcendental meditation, it allows the brain also to function with much greater coherence, much greater orderliness within the brain. And the benefits, I mean, are considerable. Without wanting to go through a huge laundry list of benefits, I can just say that that deep rest, it helps activate the body's natural relaxation response, and it reduces stress and anxiety. One thing I will say about stress, there are levels to stress, obviously. I mean, some people would say, some stress, it spurs people on to do things. And other people say, well, actually, stress can be an obstacle to doing things, to doing whatever wants to do. But it's when stress gets too much, when there's extreme stress, first of all, it can make people act in ways that they wouldn't normally do. And that's a big danger. That's why stress is something to not to be welcomed, but to be discouraged or find ways of dealing with it. It can make people very angry. It can make them very depressed. It can make them very prone to even to violence, for instance. And it all comes down to just an increase, more increase, more increase, more increase of stress that builds up in the physiology until the physiology just can't take it anymore. And it can erupt in some ill health or some depression, anxiety, or just taking it out on somebody else. It's very difficult. I do think that with relationships, it's very important that both parties in a relationship remain free of stress as much as they're able to. I mean, some stress we meet every day, difficult to avoid, but having something that can eliminate that stress. And that's one thing that translated meditation, or I call it TM, it's a shortened form, can do, is just eliminate that stress so that relationships can seem smoother. And it's not just personal relationships, I mean, work relationships. I mean, I think everybody knows what it's like to work with somebody who's, who gets very angry and very tense and homes in, this is wrong, that's wrong, and so on and so on. We can live without that. So, I mean, that person needs TM, but so I think do most people. And if they don't do TM, then some other form of meditation that can help them in their day-to-day life. I mean, obviously, I do TM and I can talk about it forever, but I totally appreciate what other people do.
Okay, now time is almost against us right now. So
Oh my
in
goodness.
our last couple of minutes, in the book, do you give instructions on TM, or do you help people in some way, or advise them, or steer them, or what's the benefit of reading your book and about TM?
Yes, I think the benefit of reading the book, I mean, the full title is Creating a Happy World, Cultivating Happiness Through the Transcendental Meditation Program. So I think it opens people's eyes to what the possibilities are. It makes them think about happiness itself, whether they're happy, whether, happiness levels can be improved. And ultimately, it encourages people to find something like transcendental meditation that can improve happiness levels. But also, it isn't just happiness, it's feeling more peaceful inside. I mean, when I talked about serenity earlier, because peace is the basis of happiness. This is something the Dalai Lama says, and it's something Thich Nhat Hanh says, sorry, the original founder of mindfulness. Apologies for not remembering how to pronounce his name. But, it isn't just me or Maharishi Mahesh Yogi who brought TM to the West saying this. It's just a fact of life that if one's peaceful, then the doors are wide open to happiness. Peace and happiness go together. I mean, I think it's the Bhagavad Gita that says that without peace, there can be no happiness. So we have to find ways to make us feel more peaceful. And then the happiness grows inside as well on the basis of that peace. And I think one thing I would say, actually, we've talked a little bit about materialism, and I think I get the impression that materialists in general think that the purpose of life is simply to survive, make the most of the 80 years and 10 or whatever, that we have, and then that's it. But I don't think that's correct for 1 minute. I've had too many experiences in my own life to think that that's the correct perception of what life is. And if there is more to life than just the material, then I think the whole purpose of creation must be the expansion of happiness, because otherwise, what's the purpose of it? We're not living just to survive. We're living to evolve. I mean, people nowadays talking about living our best self. Well, what does that mean? I mean, when one really goes deeply into transcendental meditation, the background of it, it's rooted in the Vedic tradition of knowledge
Mm.
that's, millennia old. Um,
Well,
we know. Sorry, I was only going to say we just finish this.
all right.
Sorry for the pause. We know that from that the purpose of our lives is actually to evolve to higher states of consciousness.
That's right. Yep, that's for sure. Definitely. I've created that in my own books that I've written about the afterlife. Now, your book, Creating a Happy World, comes out on the 1st of August, and it's available, going to be available all over the world, is it, as far as you know?
Yes, it will. I mean, it's available on Amazon.
Right,
One can even pre-record it. Sorry, not pre-record. Pre-order it now if one wants,
right.
or you know, whenever. Can I show a picture of the book, or is
Yeah,
that?
sure, my radio listeners won't be able to see it, but I'm sure those on YouTube will enjoy a cover of the book.
This
There
is a
it is.
picture of the
Hold it
book.
up a bit higher, a bit higher. There we, oops, it disappeared on me. It's gone. Oh, of course it disappeared.
Oh,
Okay,
well, never mind.
back again. All right. Okay, Patricia, thank you so much. I'm sorry, time suddenly got so fast. We had so much to talk about. But anyway, all the very best. Creating a happy world, and Patricia Saunders. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you for inviting me on.
My pleasure. Creating a Happy World is published by Collective Inc. in London and available through Amazon.com.